Hey there, this is Perch. So, one of the things that I'm going to do, or have started to do, and then we'll have just a run of it for a while. If I was smart, I would have timed this to be in alignment with the Avengers movie coming out. Maybe I'll release it early, and just put it out. But I'm going back and I'm looking at all the Avengers comics, and getting my grubby hands on all the different versions of the Avengers. And there's a lot of them, of different, different flavors of the Avengers, and doing a little bit of a comparison of the different number ones. So you've had, the original Avengers, and then you had the Heroes Reborn Avengers, and you had the Kurt Busiek Heroes Return Avengers, and you have another Avengers, and the Avengers after Disassemble, and then the Heroic Age Avengers, blah blah blah. New Avengers, Secret Avengers, New Avengers again, another Secret Avengers, Avengers Academy, Avengers Avengers Arena. There have been a lot of Avengers, but it's interesting to kind of go back and take a look at these and kind of get a sense of how these issues do in terms of being a good launching pad, being a good springboard for what the Avengers would be. How did they set up? And I got to thinking a little bit about just uh, just general relaunches overall, because I think relaunches as an idea, you can make two arguments for it, and I think neither argument represents exactly what's going on in the market today. But here goes. The first you can argue is that relaunches are terrible, and you lose continuity, and you lose readers, and you give buyers a reason to stop buying because people have a natural collector DNA or gene inside of them. And so if you suddenly give them a reason to stop collecting, you go, we're going to go to 100 issues and they're going to reboot. Then people will just fall off the wagon. They'll say, I've got my completed tome, if you will, my arc, my series, and now you're going to have to sell me on getting me back to the table to do it again. You sell me, prove it to me that it's worth my money, my time for me to dive in again to another series. Now, when things were getting relaunched, say 15 years ago, which was very rare, but when it was, a little bit of a tougher sell to somebody who's saying, hey, we want you to commit to another 100, 200 issues of being a collector and having it all. Today, with relaunches happening, sometimes multiple times a year, not a big financial commitment. It's a little bit easier to step into that. Now, of course, the comics were like 60 cents back then, but hey, it is what it is. But anyway, I think so that's one side of the argument. The relaunches are bad. Don't do it. Keep the history, keep the continuity. Don't. The other side of the argument is kind of the Netflix season model, which is to say you have a creator who you hire to come in and tell a story and to draw a story and to bring a vision to the table. And that person is going to do a 12 issue run, maybe more, maybe less, whatever, but they're going to do a finite run of comics and they're going to tell their story. And then they're going to step out and a new creative team will come in. And maybe the best thing to do is to relaunch and to say, here's a new season, here's a new creator's vision. I think there's some merit to that. I do think that there is a good, a good argument to be made of, hey, we're going to really get behind the creator and we're going to do this, and so we're going to let it be a true vision end to end. Well, why I said at the beginning, I don't think either of these things are in play really at the publishers right now, is because even though I think there's a lot of lip service right now to, hey, it's a new creative team, would let the creative team do what they're doing. At the same time, both of the big publishers still, I mean, and they've gotten over it a bit, but still smarting a little bit from a bunch of their creators, abandoning ship back in the early '90s and forming their own company. There's still a little bit of a chokehold of really how much are we going to promote the creator. And for a long time in the comics, or in the 80s and certainly the early 90s, the artist was hyped and people got really behind the artist. And then in the early 2000s, it kind of shifted over to the writer. The writer is what you came to the table for, and that's kind of where we are today, where the writer is hyped and promoted a bit more than the artist. But it is still the case that the publishers want to be at least a little careful not to blow it up too much, for the creator in the fear that they will leave. So, if you went to this model where you're really going to let a creator vision kind of carry through and shine through, then you would also be committing to that creator. You'd be giving them a little bit more um, hype than you do today. Now, Marvel does this now where they do relaunch and they do talk about the creative teams changing, so we're relaunching and everything else. But they're they're not doing it for that reason. They're doing it because there's another model that says when you relaunch and you have a new number one on the shelf, then people will buy and sales will go up. And this thinking definitely stretches way back to collector booms and other things that have happened in comics where people come in, and I had many customers who would come in and just say, they'd have their pull box, and then they had a standing order on their pull box and any number one issue that would come out, just any issue, pull for them. They wanted all the number ones. And it was not uncommon for people to come in, look at the shelves, and just pull all the number ones and just come out with a stack of number ones. And you knew that person had no idea what they were buying, didn't know the characters of the stories, but they were just, it wasn't like they were sampling a bunch of books in return for, uh, you know, a, figuring out which ones they liked. So they kept reading. They were just buying all the number ones because they were perceived as collector's versions. And this was when the new 52 hit. There were stores that were selling and happily selling um, the number one issue of all the new 52 comics. And you could just come in, you could just every week get a little bundle and out you went. And so there still is that pull where people will buy number one issues. It still occurs. It is more rare. It's not something that drives that moves the needle, so to speak. That just a good story, a good art team, a book with some buzz will do. But it does happen that people will buy number ones, and so the comic company looking to spike sales or get a temporary bump will produce a bunch they'll relaunch brand new number one. Here it is. You got to buy it, and that will trick a few people in. But every year since 2012, I think it's had diminishing returns. Maybe I'm going back a little too far. Definitely though, 2015, 16, 17, 18, the relaunch is having diminishing returns. There's just no doubt about it. Now you can do certain things around it. You can relaunch Fantastic Four, for example, after a very long hiatus, and it's going to pop a big number. You can promote a certain art team on it, and you see that they're doing that now. Well, they'll relaunch a brand new number one issue with this writer and this really cool superstar artist you've heard of before, and you love this artist. And hey, by issue number 3 or 4, that artist is gone. That happens, but it is again, it's a snake eating its own tail. It's definitely coming to an end. So as I go through the Avengers here in the coming weeks, and I try and talk a little bit about what's happened in each, I'll keep this in mind that all these titles went through a relaunch. All of them were trying to gain some extra attention on the shelves, being a brand new number one. And how did it do? How did they come about? Did it catch? Did any of this stuff make numbers? And what was a different vision that these creators had when they relaunched? How did that come across? So that's a little bit what we're going to be talking about with Avengers. But I thought it would be a good time to just chat a little bit about little compare and contrast of these different comics and how they've come about. So, hey, if you haven't subscribed yet, why not? You should. Hey, bring up my numbers so I can pay my dues. You remember? That's a callback to an earlier episode. Would love to, hear what you have to say, and would love to get some topics, some feedback. What other comics do you want me to review and talk about? I don't do nearly enough DC. I got so many people who always want to talk Marvel. So bring some DC, please. That's what I want. Um, but there you go. Thanks for listening.